think I've got it working. All right. First of all, I want to just thank you all for waiting around for me at the end of the day. It's always hard being the last person. My name is Grant Vergottini. I'm coming to you from San Diego, California. But actually, I don't come from San Diego. I grew up in Natal, but not this Natal. There's another Natal in this world, and that is in South Africa. I grew up, today it's known as KwaZulu-Natal, and my home city is Durban, which was also known as Port Natal a long time ago. So it's kind of appropriate. This is my first trip to South America. I think it's very appropriate that my first trip to South America would be to the city of Natal. It's a name, it's unusual because it's a name that is so attached to me. It's funny seeing that name here. All right, so I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Xcential Legislative Technologies. We are a company, a technology company, and we focus on just one thing, and that is legislative drafting. We've been in business now for 23 years, so I feel like one of the old guys now in this field, because when we started the company back in 2002, there really was no field. This really didn't exist, and it's quite rewarding to see what has become in the years that have happened. I'm also a member of the OASIS standards body, and I work to define the legal DocML XML standard for legislative documents. And that's a digital standard, an XML standard for legislation. I work with the University of Bologna and other organizations in Europe, in particular the European Parliament, the European Commission, United Nations, to define that standard. It's been adopted worldwide. We're working on the Oregon project. We're using it there. I did work with Scotland and helped to introduce it there. So we've made a lot of progress in that area. I'm not a lawyer, and I have no real background before I got into this field in the area of law or legislation. I'm actually an electrical engineer from the Boeing company. My background is computer-aided design. I know how to design microprocessors and chips and things like that. I came into this field totally by accident. I was working for Xerox, the printer copier company, and we were doing a sales call to the state of California. We were selling them a database. And I spent the afternoon with the woman that headed the organization, and she was explaining to me the problem that she faced. She was looking to do a modernization program back in 2002 to replace their mainframe system. And they were looking for expertise, and they could find expertise in Australia, they could find expertise in Europe, but there really was no expertise in the United States. And she was frustrated by that. At the end of the day, she came and she handed me a pile of papers, someone's thesis, Tim Arnold Moore, if you know him, a number of other documents that she had gathered, and what she really wanted to build. And she said, do something with this. Just do something with this. So I took it home and read it and started a company. You hear the stories about how hard it is to get a procurement through government. Turned out for us, I started the company. We went up to Sacramento. We showed them what we'd done, and they gave us a contract right there and then. Sometimes when there's no other choice and there's no other vendor, they can easily justify giving it to a company of two people who have promise and have a vision. So that's how we got started. Today, we have a number of customers. From California, we went on to build a system for Hong Kong in English and Chinese. As Wade was saying, The US House of Representatives is one of our biggest customers and continues to be a big customer. We've been working with them for quite some time. We did a project for the UK and Scottish Parliaments a few years ago. We also have projects we do with the GPO, the Government Publishing Office in Washington, the Library of Congress. We have the big project we're doing with Oregon, and a number of other projects, Chile, Nova Scotia. We've had a number of projects through the years. When I started the company, I had one vision, and that vision was structured law across the world. I couldn't believe back in 2002 that that didn't already exist. Coming out of computer-aided design, where we were decades into the future compared to law, I assumed that other fields would have the same thing. When I found it didn't exist, that's why I started a company. It seemed like a great opportunity. So I had this vision that perhaps we could help to create a standard for around the world. But I wanted to go more than just build a company. I wanted to build a community. I wanted to build an industry. And that is why we worked to define the legal document standard with the University of Bologna in Italy. It's why I'm here today. I'm the vendor that's here, but it's very seldom you'll find a vendor at events like this. An investor many years told me, don't worry about your piece of the pie. Make the pie bigger and your piece will be plenty big enough. And I've always remembered that. And it's driven me to make sure that what we do, we want to create an industry where there's a lot of cooperation, rather than being a vendor that just focuses on what we do. I've been in this field, as I said, for 23 years. And in the process of doing that, I've learned a lot. Things that suddenly helped me understand why this field is so difficult. Precision and accuracy is of paramount importance. Efficiency, not so much. Government isn't so focused on efficiency as a large electronics company, for instance, would be. There's a lot of politics behind the work that we do. Although we don't get into the politics ourselves, it influences how we write the software, how we must write the software. And there are lots of rules and traditions, and sometimes they don't make sense, and sometimes they've been around forever and nobody can remember why they exist, but nobody wants to change them because they don't feel empowered to make that change. So we have to work around and figure out ways to keep an old process, even when it doesn't make sense, and figure out how to build new tools. You've heard this all day long. Governments are by nature very resistant to change. It's just the way it is. Most often it's because the employees that we are working with just aren't empowered to make those decisions. Sean was commenting about agile processes. And one of the struggles with agile processes is having the decision makers engaged enough in the process that they can help make those decisions. Agile demands that everyone be engaged in the process throughout the process. Not in a waterfall process, you would dictate down the way it will be. But in an agile process, you have to have everyone involved. And that's a change that we struggle with. We are implementing one of those agile processes that Sean was referring to for Oregon. And there is a big cultural change that we're having to go through. Nobody wants to risk their careers. So we end up having to build systems, perhaps the old way, but looking to the future and finding a middle ground, something in between that will work. There's been a lot of progress in the 23 years that I've been working on this. The OASIS Legal Doc ML is now the digital standard for legislation around the world. It is an XML standard defined and ratified by the OASIS group. It originally started at the University of Bologna in work they were doing in Africa. But we've now taken it and introduced it around the world. Oregon, other jurisdictions, the European Parliament, the European Commission, mandated in many cases. We have a summer school in Italy, the Lex Summer School. To me, it's one of the most valuable things we have. The University of Bologna puts on a summer school every September. We gather students from around the world, and we teach them about this field. We teach them about a commentoso, but we also teach them about digitizing and modernization of legislation. If you're interested, this year it's the 1st through the 7th of September. It's always held in Ravenna, Italy, which Ravenna is a lovely town, a lovely, lovely town. It's got a lot of strong history. You'll feel you're a part of the Byzantine Empire while you're there. There's a lot of history. I felt it every time I go there, and have been there every year since 2010. You feel the history speaking to you. The first time I went there, I said, I feel I'm drawn to this field after having been here for a few days. And now, 15, 16 years later, I'm still going there every year. We've built, because we have a standard, we've been able to build tools that build on that standard. We have tools that can work with a commentoso, and that allows us to get ahead of the game because we've got tools that work. We just have to modify and configure them for different jurisdictions. We don't have to build everything from the ground up for everyone every time. And we've worked around the world. I've worked in Hong Kong. I've worked in Europe. I've worked in America, in the US and Canada. And we're hoping to get projects in Africa and New Zealand and other places. So we've got a lot of experience, but at the same time, we aren't moving fast enough. I'd envisioned what we've done over 23 years as something we could do in 5 years, but that hasn't happened. So I want to talk to you about, I don't know if you know, the DIKW pyramid. Something I was introduced to by my very first boss many years ago. And what it says is that you have a foundation of data, and upon the data you build information, and upon that information you build knowledge, and upon the knowledge you build wisdom. And it's a pyramid of capabilities. In our field, we started in the 1940s at the data layer. Data processing, everyone talked about data processing for about 40 years. That was the era of data. The beginning of my career was the beginning of the information age. We talk about IT, we talk about PCs. That's an era, the internet was part of the information age. People have commented about how things have suddenly accelerated into the world of IT, into the world of artificial intelligence. And the reason for that is that we've crossed a threshold. We've moved into the age of knowledge. After each of these layers we've moved through in about a 40-year period. So we've moved in, we've crossed a threshold, and we feel the acceleration that comes from that. Things will slow down, and as things settle in to the new era. Problem is, in our field, we're still behind. We haven't made the progress we needed to make to be in this era. And that's part of the problem with the conservative nature of this field. We don't have all the infrastructure, we don't have the underlying platform in order to be able to take advantage of the new technologies that are becoming available. And that difference is what has caused a lot of the talk today about the gaps that exist in the systems, the capabilities that are missing, the incorrect information you get, the rubbish you sometimes get out of an AI tool. A lot of that's because we don't have a strong foundation upon which we're building. One of the things that I've noticed, I've been searching for legislation around the world, regulations. Increasingly, it's getting harder to find them rather than easier. Why? Because the first systems that we used 20 years ago were so primitive that search engines easily were able to explore them. Newer systems, particularly in the US, have very fancy user interfaces. They have search engines. The information has been made searchable. But in doing that, it's been hidden away from search engines. You now have to enter a term to get the data. So what ends up happening is when you enter the information to a search engine, it doesn't produce the authoritative data. It provides something else it found that came from somewhere else. That's a problem. The information it finds is often irregular. Sometimes it's a PDF document, sometimes it's an HTML document, sometimes it's a Word document. If you've tried to programmatically access that information, use that information, you quickly realize it's very hard to use it other than at a very superficial level. And then the information is often outdated, especially if you're not getting the authoritative data, which might be current. You're getting the information from some other source. It may be old data, but the systems don't know the difference. One of the things I've noticed, I was talking to a lawyer a few months ago, and he was commenting about how easily the lawyers trust the data that they get. He had been in a project where they had used ChatGPT and Copilot to generate documents, and then they'd had lawyers generate documents, and they'd given them to him, and it was his job to figure out which came from a lawyer and which came from an AI tool, and could he tell the difference? And he got it wrong most of the time. He couldn't tell which was which. That's a problem. If people trust the tools, if the information looks correct, and they don't look at it at any lower level, they assume it's correct, that's going to be a problem. I asked, this is Copilot, do you know the US code? Yes, I do. It explained to me what the US code was, and then it offered to take me further. Now, I happen to know, because I work on the US code with the Law Revision Council, I know quite a bit about what information is there, what information is possible, and I also know that it's probably not using most of it. And the reason is we make the information available, the Law Revision Council makes the information available as HTML, and it makes a much enriched version available as XML. They're both sitting there side by side, and I would bet you that the AI tool read the HTML. It didn't look at all the information that exists on the other side. I've generally found there's not much interest in understanding, in building tools that, or building interfaces that feed programs. It's more about presenting a professional interface to the user. So whether that's putting a wall between the system and the user and the data, like in a paid system, putting in a complex search mechanism, providing the information in PDF or Word documents, using very complex styling. Nowadays, you want to put as much information on the page, give links and things, but in many respects, what you're doing is obscuring the data from a tool that may be trying to figure out what it's looking at. I also know that in legislation, the text you see is just one level of the story. There are many other levels and layers of understanding that aren't in the text. Legislation is all about amending, change management, applying one change to another. You need to understand the legislative traditions that go behind that to understand how to use that information. You can't just look at it at a surface level. The amending language of a cut and bite amendment in a bill is pretty much useless. In order to understand that amending language, you need to have a tool like comparative print that Wade was talking about. We built that tool. It was a complex tool. It took us many years to build that tool. But you need to run your query through that tool to get the true answer. Just giving a AI tool the question, it's not going to run the question through that comparative print tool to get a true answer. It'll probably make up a different answer. The AI tools aren't going to have complex algorithms that are very niche like we have built into them. I've spoken to AI practitioners, I've explained this problem to them, and invariably they quickly become disinterested. And the reason they become disinterested is it's a very complex problem for a very small group of people. And there just isn't enough revenue in it to interest them. But one of the things that has suddenly, within the last few months, started coming out. A year ago, 2 years ago, people were saying, AI tools are going to make the business you do obsolete. We don't need them anymore. We had lawyers that we were trying to sell a system to. They came back and said, we've decided that we can use ChatGPT to do what we were trying to do with your software, which made no sense for me at the time. But they'd convinced themselves that it was possible. But just in the last 2 or 3 months, more and more, we've had a number of people come to us, and even Fotis said this to me the other day. Oh, we need structured data. Suddenly it's becoming apparent that without structured data, the information you're getting back is superficial. It looks good. It's like a movie set. It's just a facade of looking correct. But you look behind it and you realize there's nothing there. Structured data solves that problem. But the tools, as I said, the tools aren't built for that. The tools don't have those capabilities. And one of the things that I, as a technologist, find myself wondering is how are we going to get there? Because I don't feel I have the answer. Because I know how slow this field evolves. And I know the big players in this market aren't going to be interested in our niche enough to do this, to make this work. So I find myself wondering, and that's a question that I don't have an answer to, is how are we going to provide the capabilities that are needed when they are so complex, but serve a very small market? Changing gear a little bit. Years ago, I was tasked with looking at a solution to a problem California had. In California, when there are conflicts between 2 bills or 3 bills, they call it double jointing or triple jointing. It's required that those conflicts be worked through and worked out before the legislation can pass. So they have to have alternatives drafted if one bill passes and the other fails, or the other bill passes. How is all of that going to work together? I'm a technologist. I'm not a lawyer. But I looked at the problem, and I built something that was very much a precursor to the comparative print tool. It did the comparisons, it found all the differences, and then it glued it all, it put it all together and came up with a result. And I was very excited. As a technologist, that was a great solution. It wasn't AI. Today we might say it's starting to get to be AI. And today, well, we may use AI technology. I took it to Sacramento. I showed it to them, expecting them to say, wow, this is great. And what they said was, you're not a lawyer, and your software is not a lawyer. You cannot be, you're interpreting the law. You cannot be interpreting the law. Your software has to stop that. So I had to change the interface to present the information but make no judgment. Now that taught me a lesson. And it taught me that there was a line between that which a software program could do and the intellectual work that a lawyer could do. But it's not clear what that line is. And it's not consistently defined. Even the information that Wade showed, where we actually do put the information together on the comparative print, would have been rejected in California because it was putting the data together instead of showing it side by side. That's an issue that still has to be resolved. As these tools get more and more capable, as people use them, what's the line? Where is the work, an intellectual exercise that only a lawyer can do? And I don't know that we have an answer for that, but that's one of the things that's one of the challenges we have to solve, is understanding what that line is. As I said, AI tools aren't built for our task. And it's going to cost a lot of money to make them work as we would want them to work. So who's going to pay for that? Or are we always going to be struggling with tools that go too far, that do things that we shouldn't be doing? If we're using ChatGPT or Copilot that's built into Microsoft Word, and we're relying on its results without thinking about it, do we perhaps have a problem there? Are we thinking about where the information is coming from? Should there be, I think there was a question just a little while ago, should there be a national resource where the information, where the authoritative information is made available to AI tools, rather than them finding the information by ways unknown? How do we address that? I don't find anyone really questioning that level of problem when it comes to the use of the tools. Yes, we've been experimenting lately. I almost wonder if I should say this. Our field, LegisTech, is a very small field. There's not a lot of information there. It's an information desert. What we are learning is that we can interact with the AI tools and teach them enough to sway the answers they give to other people. We're a software company. We can make the tools, if someone asks questions about looking for tools, we've learned how to teach them to give the answers we want given. I'm pretty sure we aren't the only ones that have thought of that. Everyone's thinking about how they can take advantage of the algorithms that AI tools use, the opaqueness of the decisions they make. If you use a search engine, you get search results. You can tell right away, oh, that came from the Law Revision Council. That's going to be the authoritative data. That's someone's annotation of the law. I will disregard that. I can make that decision because it's right there in front of me. But if I ask an AI tool to give me an answer, and it gives me a very nice looking answer, I don't know what information it chose. So with all that, does that mean that AI tools shouldn't be used for legislative drafting? Of course not. There are many applications that are much less controversial. There are many tools, and we've heard about them today. Advanced search, comparison capabilities like we're doing for Wade's group at the U.S. House of Representatives, summarization capabilities, helping to apply form and style. Someone mentioned earlier a surprising use of ChatGPT to format a document. There's all a conflict identification. The tool that got rejected that I had built was conflict identification. But the problem wasn't conflict identification. The reason it says conflict identification, it doesn't say and resolution, is that I had to stop there. I could identify the conflicts. I couldn't resolve them. So there are boundaries as long as you understand the boundaries. All right, so hopefully I got through that fast enough to let you go for the rest of the day. If there are any questions, I'll take them now.